Call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, February 14th, 2017, and start with roll call.
Tom Nall,
Here.
Ken Killian,
Here.
Eileen Nichols,
Here.
Amy Seaboth Wilson. Here. Catherine Westaby. Here. Barbara Doss.
Here.
Don Francis.
Here.
First item is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to the routine nature of previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. First item is council minutes from our January 24th, 2017 meeting. B is payment of bills. C, financial report for January. Appointments to boards and commissions. The appointment this evening is for Ellen Stepflug, and she will be appointed to the Board of Appeals zoning as an alternate. It's the only appointment I have this evening. Licenses, a request to extend the license premises of Nick's on May 6th through the 7th for Derby Days. 1 year and 2 year operator licenses to sell or serve alcohol are in our packet. Also taxi driver and vehicle licenses, and a permit, a walk permit to the Wisconsin MS Society for a walk planned on 23rd of April. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and Counselor Nall did say he had a comment he'd like to make.
Yes, concerning the financial reports for January. I think this is where it needs to be brought up, but maybe I'm wrong. The Redevelopment Authority, RDA fund, I noticed in January, the Bailey Group only made a payment of 0.58% of their scheduled payment, rather than 8.33 of the percent payable for the year, which means that they're basically a negative balance so far of $25,167. And I know that they are due to re-app their loan. So I just wanted us to make sure that we understood that, that they are behind in their payment for the month of January, and we should keep a close watch on it.
Okay, I know that Joe is the staff person for the RDA and Barb is the chair of the RDA, so
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. We did not have a January meeting.
Or
Were you
December
aware?
meeting. No, but I'll check with Barb and Valerie, see if there's any issues with that.
right.
Sometimes if we're not aware, so thank you for taking a look at that.
Okay, just thought I'd mention it.
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson. Yes. Westaby.
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any, and if you would like to speak this evening, we do have some small half pieces of paper. I think they're still green back there on the table, and so if you'd like to speak on in general, or if you'd like to speak on an action item that we're going to be addressing tonight, we would ask that you fill that out, give it to the city clerk, and then we know that you would actually like to speak. I have nothing in front of me right now, so we'll go on to the reports, board, commission, committee reports, and council reps. So, Public Transportation Committee, Dawes.
Nothing to add to that.
Museum Board, Seaboth Wilson.
Nothing to add.
Plan Commission, Nichols or Nall.
Nothing.
Nothing to add for me either. Historic Preservation Commission, Killian.
No addition at this time.
Other reports in our packet include the city attorney itemized report for January, also the water and sewer financial report for January, and the airport financial report. And in addition to that, we had department progress reports. Any questions or comments on any of those?
I have one question for the city attorney,
Okay.
and he may not be able to talk about it, but this is the one that says conferred with and sent memo to city manager regarding tax exemption, Lutheran Street property.
The owner of the property was unaware that the property had not been listed as tax exempt. So when he got the tax bill, he was surprised.
Is it a 501c3?
I believe it's a church property. I don't know the exact status of their exemption. But he felt that it was a church, and the assessor had not received the documentation that the assessor needed in order to make that determination within the tax year last year.
But it's not a rental.
As I'm telling you what I know, and what I know is the owner said it was a church.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments about any of those reports?
I would like to remind everyone that we do have an election next week. There's a state superintendent of public instruction contest on it, but on Tuesday.
So it's to
February
eliminate-
21st.
Yeah,
February 21st.
from 3 to 2.
And the polls open at,
7 o'clock and go till 8 o'clock in the evening.
that's the only
Only contest.
Only
Yes.
contest, okay. We'll go on to the action items. Ordinance 1703, repealing and recreating Chapter 46, construction site erosion and sediment control. Staff report.
Yes. This is the first of 3 ordinances, and what I'd like to do at this point is call up Dan Dressen from Delta 3 Engineering. He's got a presentation that he'd like to make regarding all 3 of these, and we'll go through that, and then after we're done with the presentation, we'll go through the Chapter 46 and then the others separately, and, we'll go from there. So I'll ask Dan to come on. Maybe wait.
For those of you in the audience this evening, the presentation is on the screen on the back.
Well, I'll get started. Good evening. Dan Dressens with Delta 3 Engineering. I've been working with the city now for over a year with regards to their stormwater management plan as required by the Wisconsin DNR. The particular topic tonight is in regard to stormwater-related ordinances, chapters 46, which is being recreated, 47, which is new, and 48, which is new. The idea behind this PowerPoint is to give a very brief overview of the ordinances themselves, and then at the end show some examples of how it's going to impact a typical homeowner and then a small business as well. Because the ordinances are very lengthy and in-depth, I'm going to try to move through the ordinance overviews very quickly. If I get going too fast, please feel free to stop me. So there's the chapters being created are Chapter 46, Construction Site Erosion and Sediment Control. The purpose of this is to repeal and recreate the existing Chapter 46, which is called Filling, Excavating, and Erosion Control. The idea is that we're going to control erosion on construction sites and prevent sediment from leaving construction sites. The second chapter is Chapter 47, Post-Construction Stormwater Management. And the purpose of that is to create a new chapter, and it's going to regulate how the stormwater will be handled on construction sites after the work has been completed. So once everything's grass or pavement or building, how it will be handled after the fact. Chapter 48 is also new, storm sewer illicit discharge and connection. And the purpose of this is to create a new chapter that's going to regulate non-stormwater discharges to the MS4, which is the City of Platteville's stormwater municipal separate storm sewer system, MS4, which is the MS4. And it also regulates illegal discharges to the waters of the state. Why are they being added? They require Wisconsin DNR. Look at NR 216. We have subchapter 1, in particular 216.0204, basically saying that once you hit 10,000 population, you have to start following the rules of the municipal separate stormwater sewer. When we look at what we're trying to follow is NR 216.07, where we're talking about construction site pollutant control, post-construction site stormwater management, and illicit discharge detection and elimination. When do the ordinance need to be implemented by? The illicit discharge detection ordinance It really doesn't have to be implemented until August of this year, 30 months after the compliance date. However, since we're doing all of these at the same time, we felt that it would be better just to go through all three of them at the same time. And the construction site and post-construction stormwater management are basically right on track to have those completed by this month. So we'll go through the ordinance overview for each chapter. So chapter 46, construction site erosion and sediment control. The city staff responsible for this will be the building inspector. We chose a building inspector because a lot of this is going to be associated with new construction, so they can get their building permit and get their site erosion and sediment control permit. The exceptions from this are transportation facilities. For example, Wisconsin DOT transportation facilities, federal highway transportation facilities, but not city street projects. Agricultural facilities and practices are typically exempted. Routine maintenance projects under 5 acres and any applicable activities exempted by the Wisconsin state statutes. The applicability is all construction sites in the city of Platteville, regardless of size, and any sites where filling and excavating will occur. Permit required will be required for all construction sites in the city of Platteville, regardless of size. And once again, any site being filled or excavated. Permit information required. If you are disturbing less than 4,000 square feet, and that's how we're going to commonly refer to this, the site is actually the area of disturbance. You're going to fill out a permit that's in the process of being developed. Your permit will require a small site plan showing the necessary best management practices, or BMPs. Basically, something that's as simple as going to the city's GIS website, printing off a contour map of your property or the area being disturbed, turn on the contours, show where you'll put your silt fence, your inlet protection, where you're gonna have your soil stockpile, that type of thing. A very basic site plan, and then you'll pay the necessary permit fee. For sites that are greater than 4,000 square feet of disturbance, you're gonna once again fill out the permit to be developed. But on the 4,000 square feet, we felt that at this point in time that you need to actually do an erosion and sediment control plan, which will consist of a general project information, description of the project site, work to be completed, and sequence of events, calculations supporting the BMPs installed, and then a more detailed site map showing topography, existing and proposed, limits of the project, drainage patterns, and location of BMPs. And then once again, you'll pay the necessary permit fee. So our performance standards, if your site is less than 4,000 square feet, basically we're going to ask you to adhere to standard erosion and sediment control practice, basically just best practices, much like you would have to do now. For sites over 4,000 square feet, once again, you have to adhere to those standard erosion control practices, but then they have to be designed in such a way that no more than 5 tons per acre per year are discharged. Hence where the calculation for the greater than 4,000 square foot site comes into play. Inspections. The building inspector will check the site to ensure that the BMPs are installed and installed properly. They will periodically check the site to ensure that the permit conditions are met. And then he or she will complete a final inspection of the site when it's revegetated. Proposed fees. We're looking at, for new 1 and 2 family homes, $75. Residential addition would be a $50 fee. Commercial would be $150 up to 1 acre, plus $50 per acre for projects over 1 acre. And the fees are set so that they will cover the permitting process, the initial inspection, any intermediate inspections, and the final inspections. And our thought on this is that a residential addition will require very little work. We're thinking something as simple as checking the silt fence once it's up, checking it after maybe a big rain event, and once we're all done, maybe 1 to 2 hours at the max. A 1 and 2 family home, something of that nature. Maybe once again the permitting time, checking it, doing an initial check, maybe 1 to 2 checks intermediate, and then a final check. And with commercial projects, there will be a little bit more in depth with that. So that's why the fee is a little bit larger. With Chapter 47, the post-construction stormwater management, the city staff responsible for this would be the Director of Public Works. Once again, we'll talk about exceptions. These exceptions are very close to what the DNR has in their current code for exceptions. For example, sites that has less than 10% connected imperviousness, as long as the total amount of impervious surface is less than 1 acre. Agricultural facilities and practices, once again, routine maintenance projects under 5 acres. Underground utility construction, not including anything that's above ground in terms of permanent structures, and any applicable activities exempted by Wisconsin state statutes. The applicability is all zoning districts except for B2 and CBT, which is a central business transition, where 10,000 square feet or more of land is disturbed during construction activity, or a net increase of 5,000 square feet or more of impervious surface. This should not affect a typical house being built as long as the entire lot is not being disturbed. So for example, if you have a 1/4 acre lot that's roughly around 10,000 square feet, as long as you don't disturb the entire lot, you don't have to worry about this ordinance. And this was for the post-construction that we were very concerned about that. For the B2 and the CBT zoning districts, if you disturb more than 1 acre of ground, you have to follow all the full requirements of the ordinance. However, if you are less than 1 acre of land disturbed, or any impervious surface is added, we have some reduced requirements. For example, all new and or redirected stormwater runoff will be directed towards the street. New runoff and or redirected runoff cannot cross onto a neighboring property unless there is an easement of record allowing. And the owner, to the maximum extent possible, shall make sure every attempt to direct all runoff to the street, existing runoff. Performance standards. One of the key things of this is limiting the amount of total suspended solids going into the waters of the state and the storm sewer system. Basically, it follows the DNR standard for 1 acre sites now. So new development is 80% reduction, infill development is 80% reduction, and redevelopment is 40% reduction from parking areas and roads. For our peak runoff, we're going to follow the city design standard for 25-year storm for all storm sewers. And then for post-construction runoff, it cannot exceed the pre-development runoff for the 1 year, the 2 year, the 5 year, 10 year, and 25 year. And we specifically labeled or noted all 5 of them because you can design a stormwater pond that can restrict one, but not the other. For example, you can restrict the 25 year, but then the 1, 2, and 5, for example, could be higher than pre-existing conditions. So we made sure that we noted all of them. And then we also require that the person must check the routing of the 100-year, 24-hour storm to ensure that there's no flooding induced because of a project. Infiltration. It follows the DNR standard for 1 acre sites. However, most sites in the city of Platteville will be exempt due to the heavy clay soils or the close proximity to bedrock. Permitting requirements. Once again, we're going to fill out a permit that's in the process of being developed. You're going to create a stormwater management plan. It's going to talk about the general project information, description of the site, pre-development conditions, post-development conditions, which is going to include site maps, hydrology, and pollutant loading calculations, description installation of BMPs, a maintenance plan, which is very critical to this, and then a certification by a professional engineer. However, this requirement may be waived by the Director of Public Works. The intent of this is that if you have a very difficult site that has unusual loadings or unusual design on it, that you are going to be required to have a professional engineer certify that the calculations are correct and everything was installed properly. However, you're a basic site and you're following a technical standard, that requirement can be waived by the Director of Public Works. The maintenance agreement, I kind of mentioned that a little bit. This will be recorded at the Register of Deeds. We'll identify the maintenance items and schedule. It'll say who is responsible and who is required to pay for the maintenance of that structure. And it gives the Director of Public Works authorization to perform corrective actions. Currently, any pond that's in the city of Platteville that's constructed under DNR requirements for the 1 acre, you have a maintenance agreement, but it's not filed or recorded anywhere. It's basically, it's somebody's word is what it is. So what this does by recording at the registry actually gives the city some teeth to follow up on and making sure those items are being maintained properly. Proposed fees, we're proposing $125 for the first acre and $175 for each additional acre. There are going to be situations where consultants will need to be required. For example, analyzing a pond or a new type of best management practice. Large sites, extraordinary sites as well. And the fees need to cover the following items: the permitting process, review of calculations, inspection of the BMPs, and then cost of an outside consultant if it's necessary. Our third chapter is Chapter 48, Storm Sewer Illicit Discharge and Connection. Once again, the city staff responsible for this is the Director of Public Works. The exceptions to this are, there are none. This is the one ordinance where nobody's exempt from discharging illicit chemicals into the storm sewer system. It applies to all water and discharges entering the MS4, which is the city's storm sewer system, or waters of the state. So discharge prohibitions, no pollutants or water containing any pollutants. You do have some allowed discharges, for example, stormwater as it does now, landscaping, irrigation, air conditioning, condensation, individual residential car washing, dechlorinated swimming pool discharges. You have prohibition of illicit connections, construction, use, maintenance, or continued existence of illicit connections. Includes any existing connections, whether it was permissible at one time. So if someone said, or if a property owner says, well, I was allowed to do this because so-and-so said I could do it by ordinance or by permission 10 years ago. Once this ordinance is adopted, it will be illegal and they will have to stop that discharge. If a connection does exist, it must be disconnected and redirected to an approved on-site wastewater management system, and that will be as approved by the Director of Public Works. And the Director of Public Works will also work with them on an applicable time frame to complete that. If it's a very easy fix, it may be as small as 30 days. If it's more complicated, such as repiping or actually installing a pretreatment system, it may be 6 months. The owner occupant of a property is required to report any illicit connections. If they're not reported, the Director of Public Works has a right to identify and can demand that they be corrected. Right of entry. The city has the right to enter and inspect all premises. The owner operator of the property shall allow the city to enter and inspect. If there's special ways that they have to enter the property, for example, get clearances, the city does have to follow those rules. Monitoring sampling equipment can be required to be installed if necessary. If the city is denied access, Wisconsin statutes allow for entry via a special inspection warrant. Prevent, control, and reduce stormwater pollutants. Once again, is responsibility owner operator to prevent pollutants from entering the city's stormwater system and or waters of the state. This is at no expense to the city. Notification of a spill if something does happen. Owner operator must take the necessary steps to ensure discovery, containment, and cleanup of the release. They must notify the Director of Public Works by the following day by phone or electronic means, and then follow up with a letter within 3 days. And then once again, monitoring sampling equipment can be required to be installed to make sure that doesn't happen again. And then if the city is denied access, the Wisconsin statute allows for entry again, which is a special inspection warrant. Compliance enforcement. Once again, do not violate the chapter. If no immediate threat to public health or public safety, can give warning. For example, if someone is cleaning out paint cans in their driveway and washing it down the storm drains, pretty good chance they're going to get a warning the first time, probably get noted, maybe in the second time get a warning, but if it's a recurring habit or a violation, then they may get, the enforcement procedure may start. If in violation, after warning or a threat to public health or safety, notice of violation will be issued. Discharge must immediately stop. And then it goes on to some of the fees and whatnot of the cost of that. The biggest thing everybody wants to know is what's the impact on homeowners going to be for this? So I went through a few examples here. So for a new home construction, example number 1, we're going to assume we're constructing a new home in a platted subdivision with an existing post-construction stormwater management. This would be a property, for example, in the Prairie View Heights or Keystone Development, where they have an approved stormwater management plan already. And in this case, the land disturbance is greater than 4,000 square feet. So under Chapter 46, which is our construction site erosion control, they need to complete the permit. They need to submit an erosion and sediment control plan, pay a fee of $75. Under Chapter 47, the post-construction stormwater management, if it's less than 10,000 square feet of total land disturbance, which most new homes should be, no permit will be required. If for some reason they do need to grade out more than 10,000 square feet, they do need to complete a permit and then submit a site plan showing the pervious and impervious areas and pay their appropriate prorated fee of $125 an acre. If they meet the design requirements of the subdivision, no additional BMPs are required. So for the Prairie View Heights and the Keystone Development and also like Fox Ridge, some of the newer subdivisions, each lot in its design had an estimated amount of impervious surface, whether it's 50% or 60% or 80%. So as long as they meet those requirements and they stay under those limits, nothing additional will be required. If they do not meet the design requirements of the subdivision, they will be required to install the necessary BMPs to meet the requirements of that subdivision and the ordinance. In Chapter 48 will typically not be impacted for a new home construction unless they're washing out illegal chemicals, so they need to be cognizant of that. In our new home construction example number 2, this is assuming constructing a new home in a subdivision without existing post-construction stormwater management, where the land disturbance is greater than 4,000 square feet. Under Chapter 46, the construction site ordinance, they need to complete the permit, submit an erosion control sediment control plan, and pay their fee of $75. Under Chapter 47, now this is a subdivision that does not have a stormwater management plan submitted for it. Once again, if less than 10,000 square feet of total land disturbance is completed, there's no permit required. Under most circumstances, this is how most new homes should fall under. If 10,000 square feet of total land disturbance does occur, though, that they complete the permit, they're going to have to submit a full stormwater management plan. They'll have to pay a prorated fee of $125 per acre, plus any additional fees if consultant is required. Install BMPs as per approved site-specific stormwater management plan. So it could get very costly for them. So I would believe that if someone was building on a lot that's not in an approved subdivision with a stormwater management plan, the city would probably recommend to them that you keep your disturbance under 10,000. It could get very costly. And then once again, under Chapter 48, the illicit discharge, no impact. For a home addition or modification, example number 1, we're going to assume that we're adding an addition to an existing home or replacing a driveway, land disturbance of less than 4,000 square feet. Under Chapter 46, you're going to complete a permit. You're going to submit a very simple drawing showing the erosion and sediment controls and pay your fee of $75. Under Chapter 47, since we're under 10,000 square feet, it's not applicable. And under Chapter 48, once again, typically no impact. So very simplified requirements for a very small home addition or replacing a driveway. And example number 2 for home additions, we're going to assume that the land disturbance is greater than 4,000 square feet, but less than 10,000 square feet. Under Chapter 46, we'll complete our permit. We will submit the erosion sediment control plan and pay the fee of $75. Since we're under 10,000 square feet for the post-construction, once again, it's not applicable. And under Chapter 48, the illicit discharge, no impact. So I guess the idea behind those examples is that unless a site is very extreme and we keep the land disturbance under 10,000 square feet, what should happen for a new home or an addition, the impact to a homeowner should be very minimal, I guess is what we're trying to summarize there. On commercial projects, we've got several examples for these. Assuming in addition to an existing commercial property of land disturbance less than 4,000 square feet, not in the downtown area, which is the B2 and the CBT districts. Under Chapter 46, complete the permit, submit a drawing showing erosion and sediment controls, very basic, pay your fee of $150, and that's it. since less than 10,000 square feet, nothing to do under Chapter 47 post-construction, and the same thing for Chapter 48 illicit discharge. In example number 2, it's that same project, but now we're in the downtown area. So this is the impact of the extra provisions we put in for projects in the downtown area. Under Chapter 46, the site erosion control, same as if you're not in the downtown area, complete your permit, submit a drawing showing your erosion and sediment controls, and you pay your fee of $150. The difference is under Chapter 47 now, is you have to complete your permit, but then all new and or redirected stormwater runoff must be directed to the street. The owner, to the maximum extent practical, shall direct existing stormwater runoff to the street. And then you pay your prorated fee of $125 per acre plus any additional fees. And the idea is that if there is a spot in the downtown area that has green space now, and someone decides they want to pave it for additional parking or a barbecue area, or put an addition onto their building, that new runoff cannot just go onto somebody else's property and cause flooding. They have to direct it to the street. And then because they're doing that work in the downtown area, any existing runoff that might drain onto the neighbor's property, they have to, as it states, to the maximum extent practical, direct that stormwater to the street as well. The idea here is to not prevent somebody from putting addition on, but making sure that they think about what they're doing before they do it. Under commercial project example number 3, we're going to do an addition into an existing commercial property where the land disturbance is greater than 4,000 square feet, not in the downtown area. Under Chapter 46, they'll complete their permit. They'll submit an erosion and sediment control plan and pay their fee of $150 for first acre plus $50 per acre for additional area. Under Chapter 47, if it's less than 10,000 square feet of total disturbance, no permit is required. If it is greater than 10,000 square feet, then we have to complete the permit, submit a full stormwater management plan, pay the prorated fee of $125 for the first acre plus $175 for additional area, plus any additional fees if consultant is required. Install BMPs as per stormwater management plan, and then Chapter 48, the illicit discharge, once again, no impact. That same project that is in the downtown area, so we're going to be doing a project that's greater than 4,000 square feet. Chapter 46 is the same. Complete your permit, submit your plan, and pay your fee. Under Chapter 47, if it's less than 1 acre total land disturbance, you're going to complete your permit. Same as before, new and redirected stormwater runoff will be directed to the street. Owner, to the maximum extent practical, shall direct existing stormwater runoff to the street. You pay your fees. But if you are greater than 1 acre of total land disturbance, then you have to follow the full requirements of Chapter 47, which is complete your permit, submit a full stormwater management plan, pay your fees, and then install your BMPs as per the stormwater management plan. So not only in the downtown area do you have to redirect your water as per when it's less than the 1 acre, but then you have to do the full requirements as if it was a brand new site, for example, out in the industrial park. So that's kind of a very quick overview of the project. Are there any questions? Otherwise, I think Howard's going to kind of start going down chapter by chapter for the ordinances.
Any questions? Go ahead.
So the erosion control plan has to be for any site, regardless of size now?
Correct.
Because wasn't there before, wasn't it over an acre or some kind of?
Yes, before, the only time an erosion control plan had to be submitted was for a project that had more than 1 acre of land disturbance, whether it was a residential project, commercial project, or industrial project.
Okay, and this applies only to the city? Does it apply to extraterritorial?
It only applies to the city unless a township will allow it to apply in the extraterritorial.
And when you say the township would allow it to apply, would mean that the township would have to adopt the ordinance too?
Correct.
So there's really no way to, if there's an issue in the township and the water is draining onto property that's within the city limits, there's no way to address that situation.
Correct. The only way you could address that situation if there was greater than 1 acre of disturbance, essentially,
Through the DNR.
through the DNR. Yeah, and that would be a DNR jurisdiction.
That's DNR jurisdiction.
Yep.
Okay.
And some of the exceptions, excuse me, Kim, some of the exceptions that you mentioned for ag-related, that is because of DNR?
It's meant more for non-point discharging. For example, in the industry park right now, we've developed the most recent 40 acres. That's going to be farmed until someone develops it. Well, you were going to have times where the soil is bare. It would not conform to this ordinance. So the idea is to allow standard agricultural practices. It doesn't allow them to have point discharges. For example, having a farm lot run off into an area, they would have to control that. So this is really non-point discharges within the city limits.
And that would also apply then to the airport and the airport property?
Correct.
Since that's now in the city limits too, or within the city?
Yes.
The airport has its own stormwater permit, so it has to comply with the directions of the DNR per their permit.
Does that permit predate the annexation of the airport by the city?
I believe so, yes.
So, of course, I'm on the airport commission, so my question then is,
Sure.
since the airport has been annexed, why would it have different rules than the rest of the city? I mean, it wasn't before
Well,
part of the city,
I mean-
but now it has been annexed.
yeah, what we're saying is, if there's a new hangar going up, for example, then that would be the same rules that would apply here. Those sorts of things. But as far as the existing stormwater that runs off of the runways and taxiways and things like that, that's regulated under that existing DNR permit.
Yep. So basically, any new improvements at the airport would have to follow this ordinance.
Follow this ordinance.
Existing conditions at the airport follow the permit.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, what about street construction? Would you have to make out a plan for that?
Yes, and we do for all the street projects already.
And so you monitor the plan, and does the city pay the fee? Eventually.
Eventually, yeah. Well, first of all, because this ordinance does not prevent the developer, homeowner, city from having to also follow the DNR requirements of greater than 1 acre. So we're going to, most of our street projects, by the time we go 50, 60 feet wide from the right of way, by the length of the project, we're greater than 1 acre. So we're going to actually, we also going not only have to do the city permit, we'll have to get the DNR permit, like we have in the past. So in terms of the fees, how the city handles internal fees for themselves, I'm not sure about that. Maybe that's something that might have to get figured out, but a plan and permit will be filed.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you, Dan. Howard?
Okay. First off is Chapter 46. The only, there are two concerns that Councilor Killian came to me today and asked about. One was in my fiscal note here, 46.04 sub 1B1. I said in here that we added the words WISDOT only for transportation facilities, and it somehow in the editing got left back out. So I'm recommending that when the ordinance gets approved, that get put back in there. That talks about what we were just talking about, making sure that city projects, city transportation road projects do apply. the DOT, it doesn't apply because they have a separate agreement with DNR. That's, so they don't have to follow that. The other issue that Councilman Killian talked about was in 46.06, the technical standards. How do we find those standards? There's a DNR website, and actually there's actually a paragraph in, I believe it's 48, that's when DNR did one and they didn't do the other or whatever, they included additional wording in 48.03 in their definitions that says where those technical standards are. So I think we will just take that definition or that additional wording from that definition and put it into 46. And so if it's agreeable to everyone, you can approve chapter 46 with those two additions. Last time when we were talking about this, the Plan Commission discussed one set of fees, and there was some questions about whether or not those fees were appropriate. We relooked at everything, and so what Dan had put up on the screen is staff's suggestion. Baraboo had a fee schedule that we're recommending that we go with. That's the new 1 and 2 family $75 fee, residential addition $50, commercial $150 for the first acre, $50 per acre after that. So those are the three issues on chapter 46.
So, Howard, help me understand the fee amounts. I don't see the fee amounts in this ordinance, but don't we generally put fee amounts in a, pardon me, separate resolution?
Yes, we do, and that'll come later.
So
as
we
a-
don't
as a-
have that resolution, so we are not setting fees tonight.
No, but for the purposes of discussion and everything else, and direction from the council, I think that, staff is recommending that we use Baraboo's as the example for us, and that's what Dan had put up in his
But
display here.
my comment then is, we don't have a resolution with a fee schedule tonight. So this
Not
is an
tonight.
adoption of an ordinance having nothing to do with fees.
Correct.
Because we're not setting fees in the ordinance, and we don't have a resolution to set fees.
Correct.
All right. And so we would anticipate a resolution with the fee structure coming back to us at the next meeting. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Or at a subsequent meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So this is without fees. That's what I thought.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I move to approve, you want these separate?
Yes, we need
Chapter
them separately.
Okay, I move to approve chapter 46 with the changes as recommended by Howard.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions? We'll vote.
Hall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson,
Yes.
Westaby. Yes. Doss.
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Chapter 47, Howard.
Chapter 47, we heard the discussion here. And so, we had a discussion with Counselor Killian again. And there were a couple of items. There was a typographical error that we'll correct. And then in 47.03, sub 1, sub D, he pointed out that the wording as proposed in the DNR sample ordinance, minimize the amount of pollutants discharged from the separate storm sewer to protect the waters of the state is unclear or is not very well defined. So we agreed that if we put the word system, so it says separate storm sewer system, that would make that read a little bit better. Yeah. There was, so those would be the two actual changes that we would make in that. And then, let's see, 47.04, subparagraph 1, B4, he had concerns about developers developing a site and causing problems elsewhere. We've had examples in the past where a developer has discharged stormwater that goes across other properties, and we've had some issues. This paragraph 4 talks about how the Director of Public Works can apply the ordinance so that that development does not exceed the safe capacity of our existing storm sewers or cause erosion or anything like that. There's another paragraph later on that also talks about that as well, saying that they need to protect everything. So I just wanted to direct people's attention. It's basically saying that you cannot direct stormwater across another person's property unless you have an easement for it. So that would be the other part in this. So, if you're trying to direct your stormwater across somebody else's property, we need to have easements and stuff like that. So those are the protections that we were discussing between Councilor Killian and I regarding that. The one caveat in this whole thing that we didn't discuss this morning was some of the conditions we'll need to figure out is we have storm sewer systems that are small in the city of Platteville. Under previous standards, storm sewer systems were built with a 5 to 10 year storm capacity. That was a common practice around, and what would happen in those instances is the street itself would flood, kind of a thing. For the last 7 to 10 years, we've been designing for a 25-year event to be within storm sewer systems, and our work here talks about 25-year events. Our concern here is, if a developer is putting more stormwater down, they ought to upsize the existing storm sewers if it's only because of their water. But if the existing storm sewer system is small before their development, should we be telling the developer to upsize the storm sewer downstream of their development because the city hasn't gotten to it and increased the size of the storm sewer yet. That's a question that we're concerned about, Tom.
Are these located, the smaller ones, located more towards the outside or the outer rim of the city of Platteville, or are they mostly internal?
They're all over. Wherever we haven't done any construction work in the last 7 to 10 years. A lot of them are in the current existing areas in town, but there are areas along the outside edges that could also have those characteristics. One example would be, for example, north of the Cody subdivision. If you've got stormwater that is coming off of a new development there, heading west towards Highway 80, going through a couple of those existing subdivisions up there, some of those storm sewers may not be sized to handle a 25-year storm event. Is it fair to have the developer upsize something because that storm sewer isn't sized to handle a 25-year storm now? Or, that's one of the questions, the concerns that
Is that
we would-
included in this ordinance?
that was a concern brought out by Councilor Killian
okay.
because of issues in the past. We do have language that would allow staff to require developers to do that. The question is whether or not that's development friendly to require a developer to upsize something that's not really they're doing. But that's totally
It
different.
allows, but it does not require. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it says it applies to post-construction so that as determined by the Director of Public Works, if it's likely to exceed the safe capacity, we can make sure that they follow these ordinances and increase their capacity.
In other words, are you saying
Yeah, I'm having-
if a new developer comes in and the existing wastewater,
We're not talking
Stormwater.
wastewater, stormwater.
pardon?
Stormwater, not wastewater.
Okay, stormwater is too small, that before we would approve their development, we should inform them that this is the situation and we may require them to do it, or we may require them not to do it. But it's gonna be up to the city council to make that decision, correct?
Well,
You said it's the DPW that's gonna make the decision, didn't you?
yes.
Yes, but I think he can make a recommendation, but
No, I think it's the decision. Is it the decision or a recommendation of DPW?
It says as determined by.
As determined by. It's the decision of the DPW, not a recommendation.
I'm hoping it would be a recommendation.
But I was just reminded that any decision that I make can be appealed to the Board of Appeals.
So it's a Board of Appeals then, not the council.
Right, okay.
So what I'm hearing you say is that this is prescriptive. That it says that if a new developer if there's a new development and the development, I'm going to call it downstream or existing, is too small, that the developer can be required to upsize
Correct.
already installed and being used, because that developer's development is adding to the is the cause of the problem,
Correct.
purported cause of the problem.
Yes.
Other question?
Is that in the sample ordinance from the state? I mean, that's okay. And there is no fee schedule again in this, so we can expect a resolution with a fee schedule at a subsequent meeting.
Correct.
All right, other questions or comments? Otherwise, is there a motion for chapter 48?
47.
I'm sorry, list
47.
Sorry, 47. Post-construction stormwater management.
I move to approve with the changes as suggested by Howard.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. And we'll vote.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson,
Yes.
Westerby,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
and Francis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, now on to chapter 48.
Chapter 48, illicit discharge and connections. Don't put bad stuff down the drains. We went through this and didn't find anything else to discuss on that, so I would recommend that we approve Chapter 48.
I'll also make a motion that we approve chapter 48 as recommended by Howard.
And I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any questions or comments, anyone? We'll vote.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson,
Yes.
Westerby,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, we're on to ordinance 1706, repealing section 347 Roundtree Gallery Board. Staff member is going to comment on that.
This is just a recommendation repealing the ordinance establishing the gallery board. The transitions team is still working on a plan to transfer the gallery. I can take any questions if you have them.
Questions, anyone? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we dissolve the gallery board to allow the gallery transition team to move forward with their plan to make the Roundtree Gallery a private, nonprofit, independent of city funding and staffing.
For a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson,
Yes.
Westerby,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next item is ordinance 1707, amending section 2405B, application for fire burning permit.
Still says for burning building.
Anyone know anything about the fire burning permit?
I can take care of this one.
All right, we obviously have the information in our
I
packet.
still have to laugh that it says application for burning a building permit at the top.
Yeah, well, that's what it's applying for, or applying to.
Burning a building permit.
Straightforward.
Burning a building permit, yep. So, quite a few years ago, we took all the fees out of the municipal code, and then when this one was redone by the fire department, I didn't realize that it had the fees in there, so what we're doing is taking the fees back out, and we'll approve those fees by resolution.
All right, thanks, Jan. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we
amend section 24.05B, application for burning a building permit. As stated.
Is there a second?
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Anybody have any questions? All right, we'll vote.
Nall,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Seaboth Wilson,
Yes.
Westerby,
Yes.
Doss,
yes.
Francis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, those are our action items. We're gonna go on to information and discussion. First is ordinance creating section 4105, misuse of 911 emergency numbers, and amending section 110, schedule of cash deposits of the ordinance of the city of Platteville. Anybody like to address this one?
Well, the chief has given me that right to do that today, we do not currently have, the city does not currently have an ordinance specifically addressing the misuse of 911 system. When people call into 911 for other than non-emergency issues, and doing so repeatedly because of maybe their emotional state, maybe their intoxication state, whether they are misusing it to get somebody into trouble or misrepresenting what the emergency is, whether they're lying outright of the facts. It happens for us occasionally that we get this and repeated behavior that we feel that we need to directly address that with the ordinance. State statute doesn't address it other than misuse of telephone, and that generally goes with the harassing, intimidating, or threatening. It doesn't address somebody calling up and trying to order a pizza, or asking for a ride home, or calling repeatedly because they felt that the consequences that they received for other disorderly conduct in the Second Street area, that they felt that they were wronged by the police giving them a citation. So occasionally we get those, and we want to stop that behavior, or at least get them thinking of not doing that behavior in the future. So it gives us another tool in our toolbox that hopefully we don't have to use very often.
Any questions on this ordinance? This will be on for action next time, but this is just information. Thank you. Next is a conditional use permit for the asphalt plant for Iverson Construction.
This is regarding Iverson Construction's annual submittal for a permit to operate the asphalt plant in the rock quarry off Mineral Street. There are no changes to their request from previous years, and we've received no complaints or other issues nothing has been brought to our attention regarding that. So it appears that it's business as usual. And it'll be on for action next time.
Any questions for Joe? All right. Next item is plan unit development, the specific implementation plan for the former Pioneer Ford site.
Right, so as part of the redevelopment project for the former Pioneer Ford site, we did previously approve the first part of the plan unit development, the general development plan, which kind of outlined the general use of the site, the uses, the density of the height of the buildings, the general layout of the buildings on the site, et cetera. So that was approved previously with a few conditions. Most of them were related to some design characteristics of the building and how it sits on the lot. There was a condition about having bike parking. There was a condition about pedestrian crossing improvements on Pine Street. And then there was also a condition about improving the access to the parking lot on site to Oak Street and increasing the amount of parking. So the recommendation was to remove the apartment building on Oak Street to provide the parking and access improvements. So this now is the second part of the PUD approval, the specific implementation plan. So this submittal makes the changes to the plan as recommended previously. I should mention that all of those conditions have been met and identified in the proposed plan, except the plan doesn't reflect the pedestrian crossing improvements, and that's only because the developers agreed to do that, but he's not sure exactly what we have in mind, what we'd like to see there, so he'd like to sit down with us and kind of figure out the best approach to do that. So that will also be part of the approval. We'll keep that condition in there. So generally, just to recap, this would be the redevelopment of the Pioneer Ford site. It would be primarily apartment building, 4-story building, 71 units. They'll keep the Pioneer Ford dealership building on the corner. There will be some commercial space included in that building on the ground floor. There will be a 49 stall parking lot kind of to the west in that existing parking area. There will be 41 spaces on site, so a total of 90 parking spaces provided. The Planning Commission did review this at their February 6th meeting. They did recommend approval. They did have a few additional recommendations. We kept the one in there about the pedestrian crossing improvements, which I already mentioned. With that building being removed on Oak Street, the apartment building, they had recommended that the developer salvage or recycle as many of the materials as possible from that building before it's demolished, and that some type of formal recognition of the Gates Hotel be provided on the property, and they didn't specify exactly what that needed to include. Staff would also recommend approval with those conditions. Excuse me. The Historic Preservation Commission had previously made a request regarding desire to do a feasibility study on the restoration of that building before demolition was undertaken, and they have since also made a recommendation to proceed with sending the application and necessary information to the state to determine if that building qualifies as a historic structure. So again, this will be on for action at your next meeting. Any questions?
Joe, I have a question about the parking lot between Oak Street and Second Street. My recollection of that conversation about that parking lot, and I can't tell from looking at the plans because I don't exactly know how I would tell. We talked about some type of screening, some type of visual improvement, some type of, that this is not to be just a flat parking lot like it currently exists, but that there should be some shielding, some.
So what is proposed in this version is, there was some discussion in the last time a while about garages or something else to provide some of that screening. Rather than that, the developer is proposing to provide a carport, which would be along those parking spaces directly adjacent to Pine Street. So it'd just be basically a roof and some columns over those areas to provide some protection for those vehicles and a little bit of screening as well. And then in those corners, basically at the corner of Oak and Pine and Second and Pine, there are some areas where they're proposing some plantings, some landscaping to provide some screenings.
But there's,
Does show up on the landscape plan.
yeah, that's the plan I was looking at until I just lost it, and I really couldn't tell what was there. Further up the street at the Pine Street parking lot, I guess it's the Pine Street parking lot between Pine and, or on Pine, between Fourth and Bonson.
The city's
When-
parking lot,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
city's parking lot, there's some
fence.
wrought iron fencing, I guess, I would say. We have a similar situation around the lot here on Oak and Main, where there's some, I can't tell from this plan, but it would seem to me that that would also be something that should be carried through.
Yeah, and personally, I think that would be very easy to incorporate into that carport structure, some screening that would do the same event. They don't have a lot of detail on that structure, but I would say we just make that a recommendation of the approval, so it's taken care of.
We would include that in our,
Yeah, I would say to make sure that's part of your recommendation, so that would be included.
Because when I look at when I look at at the landscape plan, I see in the courtyard trees and things like that, but on this parking lot, I don't actually see a reference to a carport. Maybe it's in all this fine print, but that's not the carport.
This is, and
Oh, that's the carport.
There's a very small sketch included in the
I see.
project plans.
Do they have that? It would also be helpful if they would provide, they're providing visual, a visual for the apartment complex. It would be helpful if they would provide that as a visual to some of us who are less than good at interpreting what that drawing looks like so perhaps you could ask them to provide a visual of how that would look too, that parking lot.
Yeah, so on page 20 of 26, in their plan set, it does have
Page 20 of 20, yes, that's
drawings
the
of the
page.
carport.
Page 20 of 26, right.
But as I mentioned, I think it would be fairly easy to include some additional,
Right.
features along that carport that would screen the vehicles better. I mean, that drawing is just kind of a general indication of,
Right.
the scale of what they're talking about. It's not the exact design. So our motion should be to be more specific on that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm looking at that page and it's very, I really can't interpret that very well.
Any other questions? Yep, Ken?
Is anybody here from the developer?
Yes.
Yep.
I have some questions that pertain to the quality of the building,
We're gonna have to have you come up to the
and
podium,
maybe
please.
you can't answer them yet, but at least I'll give you my questions. And
If you would give your name, please, and the company, obviously.
Sure. My name's Josh Hafron, Hafron, with General Capital. I'm a partner with the firm.
Okay,
okay, the first thing is building materials, exterior. I looked in our code, 22.061, design review. See our architectural standards. So what are you using for the exterior materials for the apartment complex, and what's the percentage of each? And then another question is, what is the maintenance required, and how often? What are the building materials? Any brick or, in our code, it says, I assume Joe went over this with you, it says, the preferred building materials for exterior walls facing streets are brick, decorative masonry block, stone, wood and/or stone aggregates. Unfaced concrete blocks, structural concrete, prefab, metal siding, and the like are discouraged. So what are you using?
I don't have the specific breakouts of what the percentages of materials will be, but it will be some percentage of brick and some percentage of cement board.
Cement board. Excuse me. So you will have portion that is brick.
Yes.
And what's, now brick, I know you have to do tuck pointing eventually. What about cement board? What's the maintenance on that?
My understanding of cement board, and I'm not an expert with cement board, is that it's very low maintenance, that it's meant to, I don't know what the lifetime is, but it's, plus 25 years.
Okay.
I can get you an answer on that, though.
My next question pertains to air conditioning and air handling. Where are the air compressors located in relation to the apartment complex? Are they located behind? What I'm getting at is, will there be noise going into the neighborhood being the Odd Fellows? Or is the air conditioner located up in the top of the building? Do you know where it's located? The system?
I'll answer you for sure, but get you an answer for sure. But I believe the condensers will be on the roof.
On the roof. If they're on the roof, then will they be hidden from view?
I can find out.
Okay. My next question is soundproofing. What do you have in way of soundproofing for the rooms? In other words, the interior walls, the ceiling, the floor. How soundproof will these apartment units be from one another? Be a matter of looking up what
I can get you the spec from the architect.
are and what's being used.
I can get you the spec from the architect for that.
Next one is doors, for example. I'm looking at quality here, and in one of our apartments, we put in hollow core doors, which are lousy. So are you using solid core, steel? What's being used for doors?
I will find out for you.
Okay. Next one is what we do now is we furnish appliances, and some apartments do that. Stove, refrigerator, washer, dryer, dishwasher. What do you do in the way of furnishing appliances?
In the units will be the units will be supplied with a stove with range on top, a refrigerator. There will be a central laundry rooms to use, so the units will not have washer and dryers. And then I don't know on this one if we'll include a microwave or not in the unit.
And next question is, do you include water softening? The reason I ask that question because in maintaining properties, when they lie them up, that's a cost factor. And
Yeah, if water softening is needed in this area, we'll use a water softener.
okay, that serves the whole building.
Yep.
And then my next question is, what is the construction of the 4 floors? Is the construction wood? Is it concrete? Is it steel, a combination? So what are you doing?
It's wood, stick built.
Wood. Okay, then my last question is, what are you using for fire protection? That you have it all wood for the 4 floors.
I will follow up with the architect on that, but we will meet code in terms of fire protection and the like.
Okay. Those are my questions. So I'm getting at quality building, because the city is going to be involved with quite a bit of money.
Absolutely, and I'll get answers to all your questions, and
Okay.
we also take extreme pride in our building, and one of the things we pride ourselves on is that if you look at one of our buildings, which is an affordable building, it will be indistinguishable from a market rate building in terms of quality and design.
Would you just give the answers to Joe, and then Joe can provide the answers for all of us?
Sure.
Okay, great. Anybody else have any questions? No? All right, we have one person who's asked to speak. Gary Prohaska?
Name's is Gary Prohaska. I live at 280 Division Street here in Platteville, Wisconsin. This is mainly information, not so much speaking against the project, but against part of it. I thought the paper, the Platteville Journal, did a pretty good job on the coverage of the Planning Commission meeting. I'm presenting this information mainly to the citizens of Platteville, along with the city council members. There were so few that were there at the Planning Commission meeting, and I wanted to make sure all the council was aware of it. The Planning Commission met February 6th, and I want to note that when the commission was asked, no one really admitted to seeing anything on possible historic status of the Gates Hotel. Matter of fact, a couple of members had stated that the paperwork that was provided, they hadn't seen anything that was of this or that they were aware that it was historic. The paperwork provided was a history of the Gates Hotel, and a packet was provided by the state that was in their files. It's the historic inventory of architectural buildings. And I requested to receive a period of time to receive a historic determination by the state of Wisconsin, that's independent of the city, to determine if it was historic. And during that talk, the developer was open to allowing some time. There was, of course, a short window that it wouldn't affect what was going on. And I said, well, if it wasn't historic, then we just leave it lie. But the sticking point with the Planning Commission was concerned with parking. Now I want to bring up some past stuff the city has done. The Roundtree Commons 600-bed apartment, or not apartment, a 600-bed building that was built at the bottom of Chestnut, 34 parking places. That was passed by the city. St. Augustine's project didn't cover the amount of beds and units to provide parking, and they were looking at 10 blocks away and all this to provide parking, which would be allowed. The hotel at the top of Main, it's waiting to see if there's going to be any problem on that, if there's full capacity. There was a lot of concern and discussion as to the Steve's building, which was going to be building, and they were really concerned about parking. To me, this isn't really the same kind of a building. This was a business that uses parking just temporarily when they're open. It's not housing people, so you're not looking at overnight parking, but they needed parking for their expansion. Then we've got the Gates Hotel demo to provide additional parking. There's 71 units, and it shows 90 places of parking without the Gates Hotel being demolished. And this is far exceeding the parking that's been required for a lot of other developments. And then we get into, also, the problem is that Gates Hotel being tore down in this development, it's the loss of an historic building. This hasn't been part of the problem that these other developments did have. In other words, we weren't losing historic fabric. This one does. Also, another thing here, there's in keeping the hotel, the developer would be willing to purchase that. We did have somebody that came up, and there was some information in the paper. The paper talked to the developer and whatnot, and I know we also get information from the architect. There'd be no TIF money used, no extra money from the city would be coming out of this to save that building, and there wouldn't be any back tax rolls or anything like that. It would come back onto the taxes right away in 2018 when it was completed. Now, the 7th of February 2017, the Preservation Commission, Matt and Joe had mentioned about that. The architect that was interested in working with the developer that we have in place that would like to restore this building, the architect made a presentation. He was one of 5 that did the Potosi restoration. He was one of 2 that got involved in it right from the start with the tearing down of the trees inside the building and everything. And so, you know, things can be restored. He has been, he's gotten awards for historic preservation and stuff. And both these people have been involved in historic restoration. They're not going to this blind. There was a lot of discussion with the Preservation Commission, and there was a motion by Paul Marascanish that he felt it was his obligation, being on the Preservation Commission, and also the Commission's obligation to move forward on this, and he had made a motion to move forward with the historic determination papers and possible designation. This was seconded by Tammy Black, and it was unanimous to move forward with this process. Now, my question is, when does this development provide tax money to the city, not to paying off the TIF? And I know we ran into one other issue with this, and of course the development didn't happen. That was the parking lot by the Senior Citizen Center, and the estimate on that, which of course didn't go through, Dwayne Borgen at that meeting had stated that, yes, the money that would come from that development would go to paying off the TIF, but the city really would not see any taxes coming in for at least 20 to 28 years. So those are my real concerns on saving this building, that we should look at this building, that it's minimal parking places, that the building without, the development without the building going down provides far more parking percentage-wise per unit than any of the developments that have been passed in the past. And that is my concern, is that we're losing another piece of historic fabric. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from anyone on the council, or any questions about the specific implementation plan? No comments from anyone? Okay, I mean, the information's in our packet. The public has access to this packet. It's in the library. It's probably here in City Hall, Jan. I would assume if anybody came and wanted a copy, they could get the copy of the information we're talking about tonight, as well as the next item, which is a developers agreement. I will say that I did go to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting last week, and what Mr. Prohaska said is true. That is exactly the action that the Historic Preservation Commission took. The building has not been designated historic. I know that Mr. Prohaska keeps saying it's historic, but I think when the Plan Commission members heard that it was historic, they thought it meant that it had been designated. It hasn't been even gone through the first step. The first step is to get the information, send it to the state. They will then decide if it can be looked at as potentially being designated historic. So it's not historic in terms of how I think many people think of it. And the developer was not there, the proposed developer, and as far as I know, he still has not seen the property, so that also gives me pause. All right, seeing no other comments, we'll go on to the development agreement. Bill?
I do have.
I'm sorry?
I do have a question or a comment. This property has been on the market for how long? I mean, this property went on the market and was being marketed by various realtors in this town since what, 2001, 2011?
2011 it came on the market.
So it came on the market in 2011. And the city, because of the continued deterioration of the site, and it is no secret, I mean, today I heard that the city bought this property in secret. That is not the case. The city did not buy this property in secret. It was not an under the table deal. I heard today that people are saying the city bought it over 3 years so that no one would know about it. I mean, I don't even know where these kind of facts, so to speak, come from. But this property it has been available for 6 years. I would just point out.
This property has, I have to say that this property, if the Historic Commission really thought this property needed to be saved, it could have came to the city council
6 years ago.
months ago to ask us to ask the developer or asked to have it put on historical register. This really concerns me that we get within a certain point, then all of a sudden now it needs to be restored. The building is in really rough shape. Now, I really love history. I love what happens with history. I graduated from this university with a history major. And the fact is that history is not only just buildings. History is a life that we all live. History not only comes from seeing buildings, but history is what happens when we read, when we look at things. It happens all the time. So just because a building is taken down doesn't mean that the history of that building goes away. It just means that we can show it in other ways, exemplify it extensively through other means. Now I'm going to show you something that I didn't hope to have to show you tonight. Ken, would you unwrap that for me? Would you unwrap this for me? History comes about because we love reading and knowing about things. And since I love knowing about houses and what happened in the city of Platteville, these are homes that I actually acquired that one of our photographers took from what they used to call the tin prints, and he actually took photos of those tin prints and made prints for me. That's how we keep history. We keep history by looking at things, not because we save a building, but because we cherish things that we can personally touch and hold. That's how we cherish history. It's not because of one building, it's because of a number of buildings. History is to be lived and enjoyed. History is for our kids. History is for everyone. So we want to save history, but we just don't want to have a building that's being a place where we have to try to restore it when it costs so much to restore it. This building right here, it's the Sam Moore House. That's the Sam Moore House. Guess what I have? That's history. And let's look at that. Now the house that we are looking at on the street, how can that compare to this when you can touch it and show it to a kid? We don't need to spend thousands of dollars trying to save something when we can have this. This is important. That's what I want to talk to you about. The building that we're going to build there, that is something that's for the community, that everybody can enjoy. We can take photos like this and put that in that building so the people that live there can learn about the history of Platteville. There is so much here. That's what I want to talk about. Yes, I love history. So I don't want to try to destroy the building just to destroy it. I want us to have it so we can use it and use the part of the buildings that we can to make sure that history lives within the building that we're going to build. That's what I want to do. So please excuse my soap opera, but that's what I think we can do. Thank you.
All right.
I'll add my 10 cents. I want to thank Tom. Right. I think that the collective comments so far are important to be made. I want to point out too, I've heard concerns in the community about us as a council not supporting historic buildings. And I want to point out that we have, since I've been on council, supported historic buildings. Right on Main Street, we gave out a loan to help Tuck Point and restore an old building. So I think that the conversation is just more about timing and practicality. And in this instance, unfortunately, we've gone down a road with a developer that may not result in this building being preserved the way maybe we'd like it to. But I also want to say that if this development doesn't go through for some reason, because it is contingent potentially on getting the right funding for the developer, if that doesn't happen from their other sources, then this would be great if the developer who is interested in the parcel right now can come back at that point and revisit the conversation too, right? nothing's locked or done at this point. But we have committed and made promises in one direction to one developer, and as a council, we need to hold steady and commit to the things we've committed to. So there's timing and practicality that we're talking about.
We did go through the city did purchase the building. I think we closed on the transaction in December of 2015. So the city has owned the building for over a year. And we had a visioning session and we did the RFPs and we had a committee that looked at the responses that came back for ideas for the property. And we have had numerous meetings on this particular proposal, this particular site. And I think that the end result of that, of course, is the developers agreement, which is what we're talking about right now. So does anyone have any questions on the developers agreement or comments on the developers agreement? Again, the public is welcome to read this. It's available in the library and here at City Hall. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Yeah, I don't know if it's online or not, but you can check that. Ken, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Tom made a presentation. I'd like to make a presentation as well.
All right.
And I see that, is anybody here from the Platteville Journal? I don't think so.
Not this evening, but we have the
Pass those
Telegraph
along.
Herald and the radio station.
Pass
so
those
we'll go
along,
with that.
please. I'll try to get through this as best as I can with my sinus voice, whatever it is. This should be a supposed article in the Platteville Journal coming out tomorrow. And I'm going to say that the article coming out has a typo, at least one in it, so be sure to read the article in the Journal because you might find my typo.
All right.
But I took it out here. So I'd like to read this. Gary has given some of the comments already, so I'll try to go through those fast enough. Did the people down there get those, Don? Did you give them? Pass them on. It's 2 pages long, and are you picking this up all right? I'm mainly reading this for the public.
It's being recorded, right, Jan? Being recorded. Go ahead.
Okay. It's entitled Pioneer Ford Redevelopment Project. In view of the tight budget the city of Platteville is facing, I have come to the conclusion that the proposed Pioneer Ford Development Agreement needs extensive revision to provide more benefits to taxpayers, less risks to the city, and to make the apartment complex more inviting as a place to live. The proposed development agreement states that the city of Platteville will demolish all the buildings on the property except for the Pioneer Ford building and sell the entire property to the developer for $1. Further, the city is to provide direct financial assistance to the developer in the amount of $1,300,000 in exchange for a developer guaranteed real estate tax payment starting in 2019 and thereafter. The city paid Pioneer Ford $982,426 for the property. Additional expenses bring the present cost to slightly over $1 million. I do not think that the proposed development agreement is a wise use of taxpayer monies. Therefore, I am proposing the city sells the Pioneer Ford property to the developer for $500,000 minus the 49-stall parking lot and the Gates Hotel. The city received a $500,000 grant to help pay for the property. So the property cost $1 million. We received $500,000 to help pay for the property. The other counter proposal is if the developer agrees to buy the property for $500,000 and build underground parking for 50 vehicles, the city will provide funding in the amount of $500,000 to help build the underground parking. Next is a discussion of counter proposals. The city is being asked to give too much funding toward the total cost of this project. Total project cost is estimated at $11,450,000 $455,000. This estimate is from the April 2016 proposal that the developer sent to us. Then I go through some past history for the city. In 2004, the city created a financial incentive program to encourage more residential developments by providing funds to cover up to 25% of the cost of the infrastructure, water, sewer, needed for residential projects. A total of $600,000 was divided among 4 projects, with the amounts per project ranging from $58,378 to $308,555. Recently, the city of Platteville, going to another project, first was a group, the city of Platteville provided a $100,000 grant to a developer which aided in the development of an apartment complex having 34 units, resulting in 92 beds. The proposed Pioneer Ford redevelopment project will have 71 units, resulting in 147 beds. Both apartment complexes will provide affordable housing. Notice the difference in funding. The city is becoming overly involved in the tenant rental market. If the units in the Pioneer Ford project do not fill well in the years ahead, the city may be asked to accept a lower real estate tax payment due to lower income from rents. I believe the city should retain ownership of the 49-stall parking lot at Oak and Pine. The tenants of the apartment complex would have first option to rent spaces if the apartment complex cannot meet its parking needs. Unused parking spaces would be available for the needs of the Main Street area. Next, the city should retain ownership of the Gates Hotel. The issue of restoration versus demolition has not been well studied. It is not crucial that the hotel be part of the total project. The removal of the hotel and the addition of 15 parking spaces is not an issue important to the success of the Pioneer Ford project. There is little benefit to the city of Platteville for the hotel if the hotel is demolished. Parking spaces return little in taxes. City costs would be expensive for demolition of the building and filling of the basement. Plus, an important structure in Platteville's history is gone. There has been little mention of the tourism value of retaining the hotel. Platteville should follow the example of Potosi, Galena, and Dubuque in using historic buildings to add to their economy. The next paragraph, Gary covered this as far as Tobin Murdoch, and Tobin Murdoch is written about in the February 8th issue of Platteville Journal. Adam Johnson was at the meeting. Adam Johnson's assessment of the condition of the Gates Hotel was, quote, best shape of any historic building, likely in the top 25%, very strong, doesn't see a whole lot of damage, fairly pristine shape, and some window changes are needed. And next is about the motion that Gary has given. And next is my comments about underground parking. Underground parking should be an essential part of the development agreement. The addition of at least 50 underground parking spaces would help greatly to meet the parking needs of the apartment complex tenants. The developer has stated that each underground parking space costs $22,000. The parking structure would serve as a part of the base for the apartment complex. The contribution by the city of $500,000 would help in the construction of these parking spaces. The benefits of an underground parking structure include better use of lot footage and sheltered parking. And I might add here also that there are a number of apartment complexes in this city which now already have underground parking. My last paragraph. The city passed late last year a budget short on funding for many items: street construction, purchase of equipment, salaries and wages, reduction in funds for museums, less for the senior center, and elimination of money for the Roundtree Gallery among the many items on the list. The predicted budget amounts for some of these items are even less for 2018. A number of letters to the editor have appeared in the Platteville Journal about the cuts to museums and the senior center. Therefore, I firmly believe that the proposed development agreement to the Pioneer Ford property should be modified to give more benefit to the city of Platteville and its taxpayers. Thank you. So this will be hopefully in the Journal.
So I just want to counter that this all sounds wonderful, right? It would be great if we can have underground parking and not have to pay for it and have a developer that preserves the historic building. And that's what we asked for a year ago when we went out for bid for an RFP. So I just remind everybody that we went through this a year ago. So we'd be going through it again.
But,
That's all.
but
It'd
what
be great.
what I'm saying here, we have a developer that wants 1 million project or property for $1. How many other developers as far as residential have gotten this type of contribution? The most has been, I've pointed out, a little over $300,000.
Ken?
And also, they want 1.3 million as TIF money, and that will make use of the taxes, so there'll be no taxes, as I understand it, coming back to the city for many, many years. So this, when you add up the two, this is too much money. I'm trying to be realistic that if they buy it for 500,000, they're getting the other 500,000 free, so they have the $1 million land.
Ken? There was a number of developers that submitted for projects. This was the one that came through that had the most viable project, and the one that out of the committee felt that was the most practical, and the one that would cost the city the less amount. And so it wasn't the fact that this company is exorbitant in what they were asking. This company was very reasonable. So, you know, I don't know what to tell you other than there were a number of people looked at this. We took a look at everything that came in, and we felt that this developer had the most unbelievable amount of projects that they have done that could have satisfied what we were looking for. We had others that just couldn't do it. Either they didn't have the financial backing, or they could not be able to bring the things that we were looking for. So I don't know how you can say that what they were asking for was less than some of the others were asking for. So, you know, I just have to tell you that I think this company, this developer, is trying to meet as much of our needs as possible. I haven't met very many developers that have worked as well and has come in as well prepared as they have. So I personally have to compliment them.
Tom, can I jump in here? So, Joe, back when we publicized, so what we did was when we bought the parcel, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, after we had bought the parcel, we constructed a team that said, we want these things in this parcel, who will be our developer, and all these questions about what they would charge, what it would take. So you announced this request for proposals, Joe, remember, really wide and far, right? And to how many different people and for how long? You put it out there all over the place asking for developers to come back with proposals for what they would do with this land, right?
Correct.
And we got how many back? 4 back. And you really put that out there to like tons of different developers. It was, I think, about 4 months, maybe 3 months that it was announced.
Yeah, we sent it out January, February, and it was due in late April, I believe.
Okay, and we asked for a lot of great things. We asked for underground parking. We asked for these buildings to be preserved. We asked for basically almost everything Ken said he wants in this letter, right? So I think we all agree with Ken that these are great things. The quandary or the conundrum is who's going to do them? We asked for it. We got 4 proposals back. I don't think any of those 4 really met all of our requirements. We picked the one that came the closest, and that's why we are where we are today. So if we don't move forward with this developer, which maybe is a very viable option, and we can decide to just stop negotiations and start over, the question I have is has anything changed since we first announced this request for proposals, or are we gonna spend another year asking for the same things and not get them done?
And in the meantime, have issues about the trustworthiness and the commitment of this city to know where it's going and what it's doing.
Right.
You know,
This is a proposal from a developer, and this does not mean we have to take the proposal.
That's right.
And it sounds to me like you had 3, 4 bad ones, and you took the least.
Well, you were part of that decision-making too at the time.
you saw the proposal.
What was I
You
part
saw the
of?
proposal.
I was not on that
proposals?
committee.
You weren't on the subcommittee, but you were part of the final agreement when we went forward with this developer. We were all part of those conversations.
But I didn't, you think I was agreeing with it?
But it's not, okay.
Yeah, I
You
think
think I
that,
was agreeing to spending $1 million and giving away for $1? That I was
Well-
agreeing to 1.3?
the
and spend all our
1.3,
taxes on it?
you know,
You're
people
kidding. You're
need to
kidding.
read the developers agreement. And Brian, please correct me if I'm not saying what's in here, but the 1.3 million that Ken has referred to is going to be paid back in its entirety by the developer. Is that correct?
That's true. It comes from the tax increment.
Yes.
Okay, and the city of Platteville has a up to $500,000 CDGB grant, which can be used to purchase the property and demolition of the property.
There's the 500 community development grant that we're gonna use primarily for acquisition costs.
Right.
And there's another grant that we got from the DNR that allows for testing and demolition, remediation of property, contaminated property.
So the city will receive assistance from other entities to approximately $650,000 of the purchase price.
Fair enough.
And additionally, I believe that in addition to the 1.3 million in TIF that will be paid back with developer payments, they will also pay the current tax bill on all of those properties. The payments will be adequate to cover the base taxes on the site.
That's what the agreement says, yes, it's
Yes.
true.
So the developer not only is constructing this building, but he's also paying back the loan that the city is, according to the developer's agreement, would agree to. And the city is receiving additional funding to purchase the site from a different source, not the developer. And we will end up with a 71-unit apartment complex with another building for retail. I will say that Mr. Killian asked about the underground parking when the developer was here the first week in January, first meeting in January, the second Tuesday. And the developer at the time said over $1 million due to the underground parking. He said perhaps another developer can add that to the cost. I cannot do that. The question was asked and answered. You know, so Mr. Killian, I appreciate what you wish would happen here. I think what
But
is
people,
happening,
but people are doing it.
yes, some people are
Because
doing it
they're-
depending
they're-
on the
They're
site.
putting more money in, so what I'm asking for is more money coming from the developer.
Well,
More money.
the developer is
We are
investing
paying-
a lot
we
of
are
his
paying-
money
We are paying too much.
already.
So
We
my
are,
next,
we
my
are loaning
question,
him money which he's repaying.
but that money is taking taxes out of our pocket. That would go into the general fund, correct?
It's in a TIF
Right?
district, it's in a TIF district, so that
But-
funding would not go into the general fund anyway.
But if we didn't give them the 1.3 million, we'd have taxes for the general fund.
Yes, but it would be approximately $21,000 if no development took place. That's what the parcel right now, all those parcels combined right now, I believe is around
I
$21,000
read
a
the
year.
proposal, 2016, April. The proposal said the payment would be $67,000. So I don't know what the payment's gonna be.
$67,000.
$67,000 would be the guaranteed payment to the city. Now, there's no mention of what the amount is here. 21,000 is the taxes.
Okay, the
that are
guaranteed
coming.
annual payment estimated, $122,493. That's estimated. That's not definite yet because the loan hasn't been finalized.
122? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. If you didn't give that, you didn't give the TIF, we'd get that money into the general fund.
We can't.
He's not going to pay it if he doesn't build the property. We would have nothing. We would have blank,
I'll say it again.
empty
The
property.
the developer needs to put in more money.
I understand that that's your feeling. The $11
We are-
million
we are putting
seems like
in-
quite an investment already,
I also
but
think, I don't wanna confuse these issues. Ken, you're mixing topics, I think, a little bit, that arguing that the developer should put in more money is different than the arguing, your letter proposes a lot of other things in addition, right? So, I don't think we can make the developer put in underground parking. We can't make the developer do all these things. The
I'm
only
giving
thing,
him an incentive to do it.
but that's not an incentive. You'd be giving him less money than we're already giving him.
That's because I want the developer to put in more money.
Right. So you're just saying that we
We're
should
over-
argue, we should
overpaying.
negotiate it differently.
For residential, we're overpaying what we're putting in.
Yeah.
okay, I think, you know, if somebody else really wants to say something, that's fine. Again, I would urge people to read the developers agreement, to ask questions about the developers agreement
Well,
because
one question I have,
the thing that we're looking at certainly clearly states the developer pays the loan back, pays the taxes on the property, invests his own money in the property. And if the city does invest some money to have that property available, that would not be uncommon for us to have invested in other properties to make it available for development. I apologize, but if you have something else, Ken, but it's almost 9 o'clock and we have work sessions with 4 people yet tonight, 4 entities. So if you want to say one more thing, that's great.
I have a question.
All right.
On page 11. Developer will not file an objection to a real property assessment of the property which is 3.5 million or less for all the years of this agreement. What does that mean? What's the years of the agreement? City attorney.
Until the loan is paid off.
The loan's paid off, so it might be 20 years. So we can't put the assessment over 3.5 million. When the
Well,
property is
I
gonna
don't- that's not what it says.
Yes, it does.
It says that if it comes back an assessment higher than that amount, that he's free to object, but that doesn't mean he's gonna win.
Right.
Well, he can object.
Well, so what?
Will not file an objection if you keep it down below 3.5 million.
Right. An objection is
So
an
how
objection.
much would the taxes be? I'd like to have that answer for next 2 weeks, 2 weeks from now. $11 million project, what will the taxes be in 11 million?
It won't be assessed at $11 million.
But what will it be assessed at?
Much less than that, because it's gonna be based on the income from the project. So the actual cost of the project really has no relationship to what it's gonna be assessed at.
Which is common.
So 3.5 million, that may be a fair number today as to what that project's gonna be actually assessed at. even though they stuck $11 million into it.
And we've had that happen before.
We talked to the financial people, we talked to our assessor, we've arrived at an understanding that that is likely what's gonna happen.
We control what we can control, Ken. The assessment is not something we can control. Anybody else have anything else? All right, study this before we have our next meeting, folks. If you have any questions, feel free to contact the city attorney, contact Joe, because they have both been instrumental in working on this developers agreement. Public, if you have questions, we're available. Our contact information is on our city webpage, platteville.org. We're happy to answer questions. But we are now finished with the information and discussion portion, and we have a work session with museum updates, gallery updates, economic development partner update from Main Street, and discussion on sale of EMS property and possible sale of other city lots. No action will be taken. We will go off camera, and we're gonna be sitting around over the table. Do you want this back?